Hi, everybody. Alison Arnoff here, and welcome to our talk today on the 5 B's of entrepreneur self-care. First, let's talk about what is self-care and why it matters, and a little bit about what's different about that and mindfulness. So self-care is typically what you need to do to mentally, emotionally, and physically take care of yourself, to make sure you're healthy, you're happy, you're rested, you live longer, you manage your stress. All of those things are self-care. Mindfulness is your ability to be completely present and aware of what's going on, focused on the person in front of you without the clattering in your head. So I'm curious why you think this is important to you as a founder, as an entrepreneur, as a human. Think about how more self-care and a little mindfulness can have a positive impact for you. So before we get into the 5 B's, let me tell you a little bit about myself. First, the boring stuff you can read. I'm, long career in tech, 30-year career in tech. Started with a master's in engineering. I've worked for 7 startups. Never my idea, darn it. But I've had 6 exits. And then I left in 2016 to go back to school. I'm a certified executive coach, and I'm a strategy consultant for B2B startups. Just some fun things about me is I'm a former Division I swimmer and triathlete. I'm a big adventure traveler. The top photo is day 3 of hiking the Inca Trail in Machu Picchu, and I'm a shark diver. And that's me on the right, and I took that photo of a lemon shark on the left. Maybe not fun, but noteworthy is I near-death survivor in 2020, not related to COVID, and had to fight to get my life back. I'm also an open ocean stand-up paddleboarder out there with the dolphins and the whales occasionally, and I'm an amateur photographer. But now let's get back to the 5 B's, but now you know who's telling you about it. So the next one first thing we're going to talk about is your beliefs. So your beliefs are the way you talk to yourself or think about yourself, but also the habits that get created because of the way you talk to yourself. So Shirzad Hamini had developed this belief in that we have mental fitness. We need mental fitness to be able to have self-care. And so mental fitness is really the ability to respond from the positive vantage point, the positive side of your brain versus a negative mindset. And it has a bunch of advantages. First, that will give you peak performance or peak outcomes when you're looking at things with a different side of your brain. It gives you peace of mind. It's also healthy relationships, because when you're kinder to yourself, it does translate into your relationships. So what gets in the way of that mental fitness, of responding from that positive mindset? What Shirzad talks about is there are 10 saboteurs. They're gremlins, or the voices in your head that try to prevent you from having the progress or the outcomes that you want. The one we all have in common is the judge. And I think you know that voice, a judge that might look at the mirror and not say nice things to yourself. I grew up in a household where we were encouraged, quote unquote, to be high performers for excellence. And so I developed a lot of self-judgment when I feel like I fall short. Well, this judge has 9 accomplices, and they can range from the hyperachiever, which is one of my top ones, where you measure your worth by your achievements. I'm also a stickler, which is the perfectionist. You might be a pleaser, where you feel like you have to make everybody happy first. You might be a avoider. When there's tough conversations or tough things to get done, you find another way to do it. You might be a controller, where you feel in control when you're in control, right? There's 9 different ones. And at the end of the presentation, I'll give you a link so you can email me and I'll get you the survey, and you can see which one of these apply to you and then how to start countering them. So another question for you that might seem off the cuff here is pain good for you? Well, sometimes it is, right? When you put your hand on a hot stove, it tells you it's hot and it takes it off. If you didn't get pain, your hand would just sit there and get destroyed, get burned. So negative emotions are kind of like a pain, and they are helpful for like a second, like on the stove, when they're an alert signal. Oh, I'm in this negative emotion. But when you're staying in the negative emotion, it just stops your ability to see things clearly. You don't respond with things like empathy and curiosity or laser focused action. And that's because you're responding from the negative emotion, the negative voice of the saboteur. The counter to the saboteur is the sage. And that sage comes from a different part of your brain that is associated with the positive emotions, peace and calm, the clear-headed laser focus, creativity, and the big picture. So when you operate from the sage perspective, it believes that every circumstance or everything that happens, it can be turned into a gift or opportunity. It's kind of like everything happens for a reason, maybe not to that extreme, but there's always an opportunity. So a victim saboteur might say, why does everything happen to me? Where a sage might say, why did this happen to me and what can I learn from it? You might get, completely different responses, completely different outcomes. So one of the questions is, which perspective is true? The saboteur says this is bad, and the sage says this is a gift. Well, it's a simple answer. Whichever you believe comes true. But to do that, you have to develop your mental fitness. And to do that, it's really the ability to shift from that negative to the positive voices, even in tough challenges. But there's just like going to the gym, fitness takes exercise and it takes consistency. And at the end of this presentation with that link, I'll be able to share with you more about it. But let's move on to our next B of self-care, and that is boundaries. And boundaries are the physical, emotional, and mental limits we put to protect ourselves. Excuse me. So what are we protecting ourselves from? Well, stress, overwhelm, and a whole list of things that we'll talk about. But I break boundaries into 3 types. The first are time boundaries, and that's saying, I don't work nights or weekends. I'm done at 6 o'clock. My phone gets off, notifications get turned off. It means you take vacations and you enjoy those vacations, and you take your sick time when you're not feeling well. It also means you give yourself quiet work time and say, for the next 2 hours, my phone is off. I have a do not disturb on the door if we're working at home, which a lot of us are these days. So those are time boundaries. The second are volume, and that's when you say no to more. To say, I don't have enough room on my plate right now to do that, or the work I'm going to do is going to suffer if I do that. So to say no. And the other option for volume, you can say yes, but what's the clear value? Can you still get your other work done? Is there a value to you, the company, the career that's worth saying yes to? And the third type of volume boundary is to delegate, to take things off your plate and put them on other things. Delegation is to be the ability to say, does this need to be uniquely me? Now, if you're a controller, it's going to be even harder, but does this need to be uniquely me, or can somebody else do this and do it well? And I can focus on the things that need to be uniquely me. The third type of boundary are duration. And that's like negotiating delivery times. When I was in sales, when I first was in sales, I wanted to promise everything tomorrow because I wanted to show that I was good and I'll take care of them. But it's important to ask people, I know you want this as soon as possible. When do you really need it? Like, what is your deliverable from this information? And can we work backwards from there so that we can negotiate something that works for everybody? The other duration boundary is bounding conversations. That's a mouthful. When someone calling and say, do you have time to talk? To say, I only have 5 minutes, or at 4 o'clock tonight, I will only have 15 minutes, and to keep to that. So you train people first off that you only have so much time, and you make sure that, especially if you're a pleaser, you set that boundary so you can move forward. So those are our 3 types of boundaries. And let's just refresh on why they matter. Well, self-care, and we talked about self-respect. If you respect yourself, you train others to respect you, and you increase your effectiveness because you're focused on the things that you're supposed to be doing when you need to do them, and not having too much spread too thin and nothing being done well. So let's look at the flip side of that. What happens when you don't set boundaries? Well, stress, you'll get burnt out, probably some resentment or frustration or anger. Your quality would drop because, again, too much, not doing anything well. Your health might suffer. You might not eat well. You might not exercise. You'll have trouble sleeping. Your relationships suffer. I was often that person that would be out to dinner and I had to have my phone out because of my job. Sorry, my boss might call. And basically what I was telling people I was out with, that there is something more important than them at that moment. Now, once in a while that can happen ahead of time. You can say, I apologize, I have to have my phone out. But when it's a chronic habit, that's when you know you're having trouble setting boundaries. So why are we scared to set boundaries? Well, we don't want to be looked at as difficult, or we're lazy, or we're not a team player, or we're not committed, or we're flattered to be asked and valued. I just recently got challenged with this one. This amazing organization I'm part of asked me to run one of their monthly calls, and I couldn't. I do a lot of pro bono work, in my time, and I didn't see how this helped my business in the moment. I have a lot of things on my plate, and I just said, thank you. I'm very flattered to be asked. Right now, this isn't the time. If you need help on this in the future, please approach me again. It might be a better time then. The other thing, we have trouble setting boundaries. If we worry, there's repercussions if we say no. Some of those we talked about on top. And the last one, which a lot of women have trouble with, is countered how we're raised. We're supposed to be generous. We're supposed to be helpful. If you can do something to help people, you do. But remember, just like on an airplane, you still have to put your mask on first before you help somebody else. So you have to decide if any of these things are going to prevent you from putting your mask on first. What else are we scared of? Well, sometimes I had a client that their only value was being available all the time, and didn't realize it wasn't their availability, it was the quality of work that made them valuable. We self-sabotage because sometimes we're more scared of success than we are of failure. And that's a whole nother talk. Sometimes we're best friends with being overwhelmed and we don't know how to break up. We're just used to being in crisis mode all the time. And other times this can be communication. We want to set the boundaries and we don't know the words, and we have to figure out how to communicate in a way that we feel confident to set those boundaries. Now let's get to the next B of self-care, which is balance. And balance isn't about both sides of the scale being equal. It's about letting everything flow and coexist together in a way that just feels good and easy. So, for example, as a founder, I did this pitch for some founders, and it's like your whole self created the company, or your whole self decided to go out on your own. And yet you neglect your whole self and running it. It deprives your company and your efforts of all of your creativity, all of you that you can bring to it. Other aspects of balance, which are me time, are getting enough sleep, good nutrition, time with family and friends, exercise, hobbies. Volunteer work's a great way, gets you in gratitude, gets you to appreciate things. And think about, what do you need to have more balance for your self-care? The other question is, how do you know when you're out of balance? What are those things you need to be looking for so you can catch yourself before you keep getting further and further? And how do I get out of balance? And then what do I need to do to get back into balance? So those are two questions that are important for you to understand. The fourth B of self-care is to breathe. And that's just really about stopping that spiral. That mental fitness we talked about is one way to do that. And the other ways is just stopping and taking a few deep breaths to slow the runaway brain. I've incorporated that recently because my brain can break a lot of world records in how fast it goes. So I've learned to slow down and take a few deep breaths and get recentered, and it's made a huge difference. So for you, how do you get back to being present? I suggested a couple ways here, but you need to think about, for you, it could be taking a quick walk, it could be putting on some music, just closing your eyes. What is it that you need to do to get back? And our fifth B of self-care are the best practices. And these are the routines you set up for yourself to integrate self-care. So one of the things to do is communicate your boundaries and needs around self-care to your friends, your families, your colleagues. It could be having a self-care community. If you have other entrepreneurs locally or virtually, find a self-care accomplice, someone that you can check in with monthly and see how you're meeting your self-care goals. And how can you engage with your community to support you and your entrepreneur community? Mouthful, guys. How can you engage with your community to support you in your journey? So self-care is something you sometimes have to ask for. And just by making people aware of it, they probably want to help you, and they probably want to develop their own self-care routines as well. So what I hope from all of this is that you think about, what is my plan for self-care? What are my beliefs that I might need to work on? The boundaries I need to set? How do I breathe? What does balance look like? And what are my best practices? So from here, think about what a sorry guys, it's late in the day. New awareness do I have? What am I going to add moving forward? What am I going to remove? And lastly, what am I grateful for? Because gratitude is a huge part of self-care. So if you go to idaretobeaware.com, I'll get you a link so you can figure out what your saboteurs are, and I'll follow up with some emails on how you can start developing your mental fitness. So thank you for your time. Keep in touch. Here's my contact information, and I look forward to hearing from you on how this might have helped you with your self-care journey. Take care. Bye-bye.